Welcome to Tales by Phoenix Gryphon. This is how it all began. My name is Phoenix Gryphon, but my friends call me Nix. Sitting in my grandparents' attic on a cool but bright autumn morning, my family and I are searching for some legal documents about the estate we're inheriting at the request of the lawyer, Mr. Davenport. "You never told us exactly what we're looking for," said Tamara, my cousin. "There are still some unmet conditions of the will," he replied. "We're searching for information here in the attic." Tamara huffed and turned back to searching. "All I'm finding are Nix's stupid stories from when she was a kid," she complained. My grandparents must have liked the stories to keep them, I thought. The lawyer lowered himself to sit next to me on the old worn-out couch my grandparents couldn't bring themselves to throw out, searching through each paper painstakingly slow, even stopping to read now and then. One by one, my extended relatives slowly started to leave. Tamara and her husband Ed were the last to give up searching. Mr. Davenport chose to keep silent, not letting her tirade force him to reveal any information. Tamara growled in frustration and threw the papers in her hands on the floor as she stood up. "We'd better get our part of the inheritance," she threatened. "Our grandparents were obviously well off. It should be quite a sum. It's only fair." She stomped down the attic stairs with Ed close on her heels. Mr. Davenport stood and walked over to the top of the steps, listening. Only when he heard the front door finally slam shut did he turn to me and smile, one that reached his eyes. "That took a lot longer than I had thought," he sighed. "Your cousin is quite a piece of work. I hadn't realized how greedy she truly was. Now that we're alone, let's get started." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Doesn't everyone else need to be here for this?" He shook his head as he retrieved 2 velvet boxes out of his vest pocket. He held them for a moment, staring down at them, then turned his attention up to me. "I was instructed at the request of your grandparents to only let you see these in secret," he said softly. "Depending on what happens will determine the direction the rest of the will goes." Now it was my turn to sit staring at the boxes dumbfounded. What in the world was going on? "Can you explain more?" I asked. Sadly, he shook his head and held the boxes out to me. Taking a deep breath, I placed both of them in the palm of one hand as I opened them with my free hand. There was a soft click as the first opened slightly. Mr. Davenport gasped, staring at the boxes, causing me to look up at his stunned expression. When I looked down again at what I was holding, there was an eerie green glow shining out from the opening of the box. With raised eyebrows, the small items now had my complete attention. I opened it up fully, revealing an ornate pendant with the head and wings of a griffin on the front of a large, beautiful teal-colored gem. Really confused, I started to open the second box. From this one, there was a red glow that shone through the opening. Once it was completely opened, it revealed another beautiful pendant, but this one was of a phoenix with its wings spread wide, a deep red stone as its chest. Looking up to the lawyer once again, totally lost, his smile was wide, genuine, and went all the way to his eyes. "They finally found their protector. Now I can tell you everything you need to know about them," he chuckled. "You look like you're a little out of it." "That's an understatement," I replied, and then waited for him to continue. He took a deep breath and began. "An extremely long time ago, the mythical creatures that we've always heard of actually lived and thrived until greedy and evil humans interfered. It ended up that only one phoenix and one griffin were all that was left of their kinds. Since their lives were long and they were drawn to the same area, they ended up meeting. At first, they saw each other as rivals over food and territory, but after the first century faded away, the phoenix had just been reborn from its ashes, and there were some hunters nearby looking to end its life while it was the most vulnerable. Fury filled the griffin, and it guarded the small phoenix until it was old enough to protect itself once again. That one act of kindness changed the relationship of the two. That was when the people of the area began to get scared and worried about what kind of creature would come if they ended up reproducing. Powerful magics were tapped, and multiple covens were called in, creating a spell strong enough to trap them. They've been imprisoned in these stones for centuries. There's a prophecy that when reunited, they'll bring the world magic and joy, even though the human race only brought them pain and heartache. It seems people can be cruel and selfish in any time period, I replied sadly. He nodded in agreement. "There's more," he said softly. "It was only their magic their essence that was captured in the amulets, according to the legends. We don't know much. Records from back then were destroyed, if any were kept to begin with. Originally, it was said that the two coven leaders each took one, and they went back to where they had come from. You are a descendant of both of those lines. Your father's from one, and your mother's from the other. This is how your name was chosen. Your parents were informed of the prophecy through a friend of theirs and began to rethink all they had been taught from their families that had been passed down through word of mouth. They told your grandparents, and eventually they came to the same realization. They wrote it all down, and I have it in my office to give you later. At the mention of my parents, who had died in an accident when I was a teen, it was like getting a small part of them back. Tears threatened, but I held them back. Now was not the time. I needed to focus. Setting the boxes on my lap, instinctively I picked up a necklace in each hand. It was as if there was a magnetic pull between the amulets toward each other. Slowly, I let them touch. Feeling a jolt run through my hands, I struggled to hold on to the necklaces as a blinding white light filled the room for a moment and two animal-like screeches were heard. Then silence. After our eyes adjusted back to the normal lighting, we noticed something had drastically changed. Instead of two necklaces, now only one rested in my hands. It had both a phoenix and a griffin etched on each side of it, glowing a fiery red and orange. The gem was a gorgeous shade of light teal. Warmth spread through my hands all over my body. When it reached my shoulder blades on the back, it began to sting slightly. Looking at Mr. Davenport, his face held pure shock. "Your back is glowing," he whispered. "It's stinging a little," I grimaced. It ended a few seconds later, and I shakily stood with the lawyer's help and went over to an oval mirror on one of the walls. Turning, I slid the straps of my tank top off my shoulders to see my back, making sure to keep my modesty, and glanced at my reflection. "Oh my word," he whispered. "I've never seen anything like this." On each of my shoulder blades was the identical creatures from the necklaces. Here, though, their full bodies were in vibrant color. My eyes widened, not sure if I could believe what I was seeing. Blinking several times, I felt an urgent need to put the necklace on. What could it hurt, I thought, as I placed the amulet over my head. As it settled around my neck, the fiery glow went away. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Mr. Davenport back up several steps. Looking in the mirror, I understood why. Flames were dancing off my shoulders, and then disappeared as figures of a phoenix and a griffin appeared hovering over each shoulder. They were transparent, each bowed their head for a moment, and I had the distinct feeling that they were thanking me for freeing them from their prisons. Looking over at the griffin, the phoenix's eyes filled with tears that they let fall, which landed on my head. Amazingly, I actually felt them. "Are you all right?" asked Mr. Davenport, his voice soft and a little breathy. "I feel fine. Actually, I feel better than I ever have in my entire life." Looking at each creature next to me, images started flooding my mind. At first, it was overwhelming, and I sank into a nearby chair holding my head. Mr. Davenport was at my side instantly, resting his hand on my arm reassuringly. After taking several deep breaths, I began to understand. Scenes played out in my head, like from a graphic novel or a movie. "I'm seeing stories playing out in my head," I whispered. "How is this happening?" After a few moments of intense thought, his sharp intake of breath made me open my eyes and look up at him. "I think I know what this could be," he said reverently. "I've known your family all my life. Mine is from one of the other covens that was involved back then. As the years passed, our family, too, grew to regret the part we played in what happened. We were relieved when that family found the long-hidden prophecy. They will bring magic and joy. You used to write when you were young. With your portion of the inheritance, you can take writing courses and share your stories with the world. I would advise not telling anyone where they came from, though, of course." "Of course," I laughed. I could feel their joy at the mention of this plan. "I think my muses like this idea." "That's a good term for them," he smiled. "What about my cousin and the rest of my family?" I asked. I didn't want hatred to tear what little family I had left apart. "The money that you will receive will be from a secret part of their estate," he replied. "You'll seem to get less than the rest of your family, and then a scholarship will be given to you for your education that will come with living expenses. May I suggest renting a small apartment while attending school? You don't want to attract unwanted attention." "I believe I will do that," I agreed. "Thank you so much. I hope you'll continue on as my advisor and legal aid. I have a feeling your life is going to start getting very interesting from this point on. I'll be here for you in any way I can to help," he said. "Thank you," I smiled. My muses, content for now, disappeared back into my shoulders, where I now had ornate tattoos in their perfect likenesses. This is definitely going to take some getting used to, but I'm really looking forward to what's coming next. Thank you all for listening. Join us again